Hey folks, it's Bob. Sorry it's been a while since I did a video. I'll tell you a little story. Now, I'm about 7 or 8 pounds lighter after 4 or 5 days. That's a hell of a weight loss program, let me tell you. I got Lyme, but I'm kicking it. I'm feeling good today, so I figured I'd take a walk. I'm gonna tell you something. This is not the first time I've gotten Lyme. A lot of people get freaked out. They're like, "You'll get Bell's palsy." You can. It can be pretty harmful to you. And if you were in the state that I was in a couple days ago, shakes, hallucinations, 104-degree temperature for almost 3 days straight. I knew what it was as soon as it was happening, but it's only because it's happened to me before. You hang out in the woods. You live out in the country, even if you live in a city nowadays, with the way the ticks are, you're bound to get bit. Not all ticks carry Lyme. You won't get Lyme from every single one that bites you. I had a few bite me over the winter, plucked them off, bigger ones. A few bite me in the spring, plucked them off. But it was weird because around probably April or so, I was feeling rather depressed. That's not me. I'm not. I mean, I go through some seasonal stuff every once in a while, and that's about it. I think everybody does, really. What happened was, Saturday after the military guys were over, I just didn't feel good. I was cleaning up around my mother-in-law's pole. There's some tall grass and stuff from the, grew up over the spring. We were getting ready to clean the pole out and stuff, and I was weed whacking and walking through tall grass, and and she got a bunch of what I call barn cats over there. They just kind of hang out by the pole and they eat rodents out of the barn and stuff, and they carry stuff in with them. And I didn't know it. I had a little tick on my shoulder. Now, the funny thing is, my grandfather used to tell me, it's not the big ticks you got to worry. It's not the ones you plucked off of you that you got to worry about. The ones that you found, it's typically the ones that you didn't see. And little tiny ones, they're on and off. Bit me on my shoulder and on my hip. I didn't know it. So I went to sleep 6:30 that evening, didn't get up till 4:30, and I woke up shaking, just shaking profusely, talking to myself. My daughter heard me. She came in. My little girl, she's 12, she took my temperature. And she got me, she does what she would typically do. She poured me a cup of coffee and I didn't want it. And she went in and said, "Mommy, there's something wrong with Daddy." Because I didn't want coffee. So at first I was just kind of like, I don't know. I'll go to the doctor's on Monday or something. Sunday rolled around. I was hurting so bad. Monday came around. I couldn't move. And my legs have been hurting for a few weeks. So some of the other tick bites, along with, it was like that little one, I guess, on Saturday was the last straw or whatever. And sorry, I'm just looking at the garden and I'm loving it because I haven't been out here in a few days. That one just, it threw me for a loop. That was it. Now, this is what I want to tell a bunch of folks. If you are like a lot of people today and you post on like Facebook or something that you got bit by a tick and you think you got Lyme or whatever, like I said, I've been through it so many times. I can't even tell you at this point. People are going to give you a lot of different advice. They're going to tell you, don't take antibiotics, they'll destroy your stomach. Yeah, they will. So take them while you have a full belly. Okay? Eat a meal, fill up, and eat fermented foods while you're on antibiotics. That's the key. Because it's going to kill the bacteria in your digestive tract and some of that bacteria that you actually need. So eat things like sauerkraut and fermented foods, drink a glass of wine, that kind of stuff. That's going to help you reconstitute those things. move everything through your system and recondition your system while you're on those, because you're going to be on them for like 21 days, twice a day. Okay, and they're strong. Now, these aren't, for all you preppers out there that say, oh, I stocked up on fish antibiotics, not going to do it. Listen to me when I say you're going to hurt yourself. I don't care what any of those people out there have been telling you. When it comes to Lyme, if you try to get rid of it with fish antibiotics or something, you're just going to suffer. It's not going to go away. You have to get a prescription that's specifically for that. And what they're going to do is they're going to take blood tests, do blood work on you. Now, funny thing about Lyme, if you have early stage Lyme, and this is the trick to it, they call it Lyme disease, and for years the FDA and the CDC says diseases don't have a cure. Well, Lyme actually does. Even the later stages of Lyme, where you can start experiencing paralysis and loss of use of your motor functions and those kinds of things, those can actually be treated and cured, actually. Okay, but don't wait until it fucking gets that long, that far. All right. With the right regimen of 21 days usually of antibiotics, it's going to knock it out of your system for early Lyme detection. If the tests come back negative, meaning it didn't find it, keep on taking it, because you had the symptoms apparently, right? A lot of times it's a bullseye. I'd show you, but it's on my shoulder here. It's like a bullseye, okay? Let's see if I can find one example, at least that you can see. Not in great lighting here. There you go. Can you see that? Right there. That's a bullseye. A dot in the middle, and it starts getting a ring around it. Luckily, I caught it early. That, okay? The blood work can come back and say that you don't have it. You still take that 21-day regimen and complete it, okay? Eat good food while you're doing that. Drink lots of water while you're doing that. Like I said, have some fermented foods too. Even if you don't like it, it will protect your belly and your gut. You'll be fine, okay? I'm not a big fan of antibiotics either, trust me. But there's a time and a place for them. This is one of those, because this shit can get serious for you folks, okay? This isn't one of my typical videos where I'm going to be palling around with you and stuff. I'm talking serious about this. It will knock you out. Now, luckily, I have a very, very resilient immune system. I mean, I can heal like that. I've always been that way. But I know a lot of folks, they react differently to different things, okay? So you go to a doctor. Don't go to Mr. So-and-so on Facebook who thinks he knows everything, or watch a few YouTube videos and think you're an expert about your own health, because you're not, okay? Go to a doctor, a MedExpress, something like that. Get checked out. They'll run some blood work, but in the meantime, they will prescribe you antibiotics. First thing you need to do, though, is when you come in from the outdoors, if you've been sitting out in the yard or doing some pruning around the house or mowing the lawn or playing in the woods like we tend to do, check yourself out. What I typically do is I take my outer clothes off if I'm wearing like long sleeve, which the other day I wasn't wearing any long sleeve stuff because I was weed whacking and stuff. Should have been. Take that stuff off outside, shake it off and hang it out, right? Then have a family member, or at least yourself, brush yourself off really good. Check yourself for anything that might be crawling on you, all right? If you're really concerned, if you know you're in a place in the woodlands where there's a good chance that there's ticks on the grass or on the ground or whatever, you know, wear wader boots, like come up to your knees or whatever, right? Mucks, edge waters, things like that. Those are pretty good, and they're easy to walk in the summertime and everything, all right? Next is when you go home, take those clothes off, right? If you've been spending the day outdoors, take those clothes off, throw them in the washing machine, and go take a shower. Quickest way to get rid of ticks off you. When you're washing yourself, use like a loofah or whatever to scrub your back and everything. If you got anything on your back that'll help you get it off, try to look in the mirror, see if you got anything on you. If you find anything on you, give it a left counterclockwise twist and try to pull it out. If you cannot pull it out that easy by giving it a small twist and pull, if it won't come out, go to a doctor and have them take it out. I'm not joking about this. You don't want to leave the head in there. If you break that head off in there, or you get that guy to pull himself in there even further, it's going to be even harder, and that's when he's going to eject any kind of, let's call it tick saliva that he has, all right? Most ticks won't cause Lyme. It's mostly deer ticks. The thing is about deer ticks is they're really tiny. The harmful ones are really tiny, okay? And you usually don't see them. So it happens. You're looking for any type of bullseye type mark like I just showed you. Sometimes that won't show up, all right? But if your joints start feeling achy, if you start feeling like you have the flu, if you start getting fevered around this time of year, when flu's not going around, that's a good time to go get checked out. Now I say this because a lot of folks will just try to muscle through it and be a man and, you know, blah, 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 all that. My parents are that way, right? They won't go to doctors for nothing. Me, I've had cancer. I've had 13 broken ribs. I've had bolts put in my knees and my ankles, one right here in my jaw. Had surgeries, nerve damage in my hands. Yeah, I go to the doctors to get checked out, especially blood work on a regular basis. And especially because I have a family, you know. Now, I work for myself. My 4 or 5 days off didn't affect anybody. Didn't have any client work that needed to get done. I was done. My schedule was caught up, you know, just planning on hanging out with the kids. My life is what it is. Your life is likely not like that. You have to go to work. You have to take care of your family, keep food on the table and everything. Is it fair to them if you don't take care of yourself? No, right? And especially, your kids need to see you taking care of yourself so they learn to take care of themselves as well, okay? So it's not something to play around with. I'm really serious about this and putting it out there. Trust me, I'm not quite at the point where I felt like recording a video or anything, but I want you guys just to realize that I care about you. And for those of us that, you know, we've been through this so many times that it's ridiculous at this point. And people say, what can I do about it? Well, you wear an outer layer of clothing for one. Always wear a hat, keep them off your head, because a lot of times ticks are going to drop off the trees, low-hanging branches, things like that. Notice I play in between a field and the woodlands, and we all know that's heavy tick traffic area because small game move through here a lot, and they're the ones that typically carry those, them and birds, right? And then the deer brush up against the brush, and that's when the deer get them. I'm making myself itch talking about it. But at the end of the day, we're typically pretty good about it, but it's kind of like, you know, for as many times as I'm out in the woods doing stuff and playing and going on trips and things like that, it's bound to happen. But this is the first time in 16 years that it happened. It's not too shabby, good track record, right? It's just that the tick population is getting so much more. I remember hunting end of archery season last fall. It was 30 degrees out. I was leaning against a tree, coming up to the house, and I had 6 ticks on my arm. 30 degrees out. I've never experienced that in my life. They've just become more prevalent because we have warmer winters, birds migrating slower, staying in places longer, and leaving their garbage behind for us, basically. And it's spreading from the northeast down into the Midwest and back. So all those ticks that used to stay down south are now come up here, and they're all over the place. That's why you're seeing more ticks. Don't believe me? Call the National Forestry Service. They'll tell you the same thing I just did. It's just nature, folks. It's what happens, okay? I'm trying to stay out of the sun here. It's kind of tough. So if you start feeling like lethargic, if you start feeling like you're walking through sludge, your tendons and joints start hurting really bad. I know for some of you, if you're like me, our tendons and joints hurt all the time. But you know, there's some funny things about all this stuff. I'm going to try to, can you see right here? Well, for a while there, I had this big, look at some of my past videos, I had this big lump right here. I mean, I still have it a little bit, right there. See, it's gone. That wasn't fat, it was hard, okay? Like I said, my tendons and joints usually hurt all the time. Not right now. And when I say all the time, I mean all the time, okay? I was feeling, like I said, moody and kind of depressive over in the early spring. It tells me I've been carrying some kind of infection for a while, and that's what I was trying to get to about Lyme. Lyme is basically an infection caused by the ticks, okay? They're spreading an infection into your bloodstream, which can be corrected with antibiotics. And there's specific kinds of antibiotics they use for that, okay? They're not all created equal. So take your regimen of antibiotics and make sure you do it on a full stomach, and make sure you stick to it, and you do it for all 21 days until that bottle's gone, all right? Get regular blood work and things when you're feeling down. People are like, hey Bob, which kind of knife should I get? What kind of pack should I get? And they don't have medical insurance, and they're like, I can't afford to go to a doctor. Really? This day and age? You gotta, I know the blood work, I have medical insurance, but it doesn't cover everything. The blood work, I went to a Med Express, which is like a, I don't know if you guys have them or not. They're like practitioner co-ops. It's for quick stuff, like they can help you if you need to set a sprain or something like that, or do quick, checkup, or, those kind of things, right? And usually my copay on that is $45, and then they bill my insurance company for the blood work and stuff as like, I think $208, something like that. And then the prescription cost me $10, usually costs $60. Okay, so if you had to pay for it and you didn't have any insurance and everything, you're looking at about $268, somewhere around there. And that's about a cost of one of them expensive damn knives that you guys like to buy all the time. Not saying there's anything wrong with it, I am. Buy the gear that you want to buy. But when we're out here playing and we're doing this stuff and we don't have these means of correcting problems when they occur, does it become fun for you anymore? No. It was funny, I was on my way out here and my neighbor's like, Bob, what are you doing out of the house? You're not supposed to be out in the sun like this. And he's right. I'm not supposed to be in direct sunlight. Because when you take antibiotics, you can get really severe burns from the sun. But I'm paying attention to where I'm at. For one, I've worn cover. I'm not wearing shorts, and I don't have my head exposed and everything. I'm fine. But he's like, I can't believe you even feel like walking around, let alone going out into the woods. I won't want to go out in the woods after that. I'm like, I didn't get the tick from being out in the woods. I got it from being around the pool. Well, I'm never going to be around the pool again? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, an asteroid might hit the Earth. You should just stop living right now. No. Shit happens. It's just the way it is. Just be aware of it. And like I said, take it seriously. Don't screw around, folks. I grew up with parents that would never go to the doctors for anything. And here's the tragedy of it. I don't really tell people this. My mom was 48 when she started having strokes. I knew she was having strokes. My dad knew she was having strokes. Her sisters and my sisters knew she was having strokes. Nobody seemed wanting to enforce for her to go to the freaking doctors. And one day I said, Mom, you gotta go to the doctor. I said, I'll take you up to the Med Express there. They'll just check you out real quick, let you know what's going on. She wasn't feeling good one day and she was slurring in her speech and stuff. She said, okay. My sister my older sister being the real piece of work that she is, says to my mom, while I was waiting for my mother to change her clothes and everything, she says to her, oh, they'll probably send you down to the hospital. Immediately my mom changes her mind. I don't want to go. I said, Mom, don't worry about it. I'll pay for it. No, I don't want to go. All right. Over the course of the year, she had 64 mini strokes. She has a bleeding hemorrhage in her brain. She always will. My dad retired early to stay at home and take care of her. When he turned 62, he died 8 months later from hardening of the arteries because he didn't want to go to the doctors because he was afraid that when he was not feeling good, he was afraid they'd hospitalize him and there wouldn't be anybody around to take care of my mom. Meanwhile, I lived right up the road and my sister came over every day to take care of my mom. 3 days before my dad died, I talked him into finally going to the doctors, and he went to get blood work done and everything. And when he came home, it surprised me because he was in really bad shape. And I said, they let you, really? They didn't tell you that you should be hospitalized? He goes, well, I'll just wait for the blood work to come in. They did tell him he needed to be hospitalized. But his stubbornness got him dead. 3 days after that. He never even saw the results of the blood work. My dad was fearful that he had cancer. He was a very, very heavy smoker for a very, very long time. He thought he had lung cancer. No, he had very, very early stages of emphysema. He likely at some point in his life, years later, probably would have developed COPD. He had not one cancer cell in his body. He had hardening of the arteries, and had he stayed in the hospital that day, let's see, how long ago was that now? Well, he'd be 68 now, so he'd be 68 now. He'd be 68 this fall, so you know, figure 5 or 6 years ago, 5 years ago now. It'll be 5 years ago. Yesterday. He'd still be here. He'd likely still be here. Had my mom listened to me when she was 48, and she's 66 now, she'd be able to walk and talk and take care of herself. She probably wouldn't have let my dad fall ill like he did, because she would have kicked his ass for it. She wouldn't be an invalid, not being able to take care of herself, not remembering who her son is. All simply because these people wouldn't go and just get some blood work done, get checked out when they weren't feeling good. There's nothing wrong with that. Their excuse was always, well, how are we supposed to pay for those medical bills? Yeah, that's a real scary thing for a lot of folks. I understand that. I took that excuse away from them because I told them I would. I didn't care what I had to do it. I would have done it. Some of you don't have people around that'll do that for you, but there's always a way. You're talking to a guy who just turned 18, passed out in a parking lot doing a landscaping job one night, woke up 3 days later in a hospital. The first thing you hear is a doctor telling you, I want you to stay still while I tell you this, but we found a major tumor on your rib cage. We're afraid that it's malignant, and you likely only have about 6 months to live. No medical insurance because I was very young, right? I had just moved out on my own. And I said, are you sure about that prognosis? And they're like, yeah. I said, okay. So I got up, put my clothes on, and I left, and I went to a different doctor. He said the same thing. It's all right. So I got up and I left, and I went to a different doctor. That went on for about 4 or 5 weeks, and I kept doing it. So I found one that decided I don't have an expiration date on me, because I didn't believe that I did. There wasn't some miracle cure. I didn't go through heavy rounds of chemotherapy. I went through experimental procedures. I went through medication. I had diet, highly alkaline diet. I just had this feeling that if you did a lot of things that were preventative, that would help while they were treating it. So that's what I did. 8 long years of pain and suffering. And you'll love this number, $6.8 million in medical bills. And I paid it all in cash. Every cent of it. I bought and sold houses. I grew businesses and made them successful. And then I sold them. And then I did a lot of sales and marketing, and I wrote television ads, and I designed some engineering schematics for a couple robotics company, because that's what I went to school for, was robotics and engineering. And I just kept doing that stuff. I came from a very poor family, so I didn't have any money starting out. But it was Jim Rohn. If you don't know who Jim Rohn is, look him up. He's an amazing speaker, business coach, personal development coach, probably one of the best that ever lived. He said to me one day, I was doing work for him, he'd say, he didn't know I was sick. His timing was impeccable. If you were told that you only had 6 months to live, Robert, what would you do? I said, well, I'd likely do everything I could to live beyond that 6 months. He said, you want to try to experience everything you can within that 6 months? I said, no, that's giving up. I'm not done yet. He goes, I never looked at it that way. It wasn't until a couple days later when one of his assistants said, Jim, you know that guy's dying, right? It was funny to me. I can laugh about it, you know. Jim wasn't laughing. He was so upset with himself. But what Jim found out about me, what Billy Mays and a lot of other big mentors like Henry Hillman, one of the richest people in the United States, was one of my business mentors and a friend. What all these guys realized about me was there's no impossible. There's no impossible when it comes down to my family, it comes down to our lives and our livelihoods. There's no such thing as impossible to me. People say, well, you got this special knowledge. I created every damn piece of knowledge I got in my head. I looked for it, I found it, I read it, and I reread it, and I reread it again, and I rewatched it, and I re-listened to it over and over and over again until I got it. And then you know what I found out later on, as life went on? Every time I'd revisit that information that helped me the first time, I'd find new things in that information each and every other time that I wasn't ready to receive then, that at this current stage in my life I am. Right? So we grow even with the information that we've used over the years. Now, short books I like to read, and I'll continue to read, is things like Acres of Diamonds. People like to say Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. There's another one like that he wrote. There's something like How to Get a Raise or How to Get a Bigger Paycheck. I think it was How to Get a Raise. It's something like that. Search that, Napoleon Hill, How to Get a Raise, or How to Get a Better Job, or How to Get a Bigger Paycheck. What people don't realize, Napoleon Hill, where he did interview Andrew Carnegie, he didn't put that full thing into Think and Grow Rich. That wasn't the book that Carnegie paid him to write, because Napoleon Hill owed a lot of bad people a lot of money, and he was going through a hairy divorce with a wife that was hanging out with the bad people. So Napoleon Hill was a pretty smart guy. He didn't write that book until he was in his later years and basically dying, and it was about something about getting a job or getting a better paycheck. I can't remember the title right now. Look it up. That one reveals the actual things that Andrew Carnegie told him. And every time I read it, I learn something new from it. Then there's Charles Haanel's The Master Key, Charles Haanel, Master Key System. Leslie Feger did a rewrite called the Delphi Knowledge System, very expensive. But Haanel's Master Key, Wallace Wattles' Science of Being Rich. Wallace Wattles and Charles Haanel being two of the original fathers of personal development, basically. Earl Nightingale has a famous speech that you can listen to on YouTube. It's pretty long. You'd probably want to listen to that a few times. I start my days with that kind of stuff. I continue to learn and apply those things. I always have. When I was 12 years old, I had an uncle that gave me How to Win Friends and Influence People book, and I thought, man, what a jerk, you know, because I didn't hang out with a lot of other kids my age, so he figured I didn't have any friends. That wasn't it at all. I didn't like people my age. But he gave me this book and I read it. I think he was surprised that I read it and actually understood it, but I've read it since then too. What to say when you talk to yourself. That's Shad Helmstetter. That's another good one. Now, these books may not make sense to you, being in the outdoors, prepper, self-reliance, but where did the term self-reliance come from? When did that first appear? Look it up. Who came up with the term self-reliance? Ralph Waldo Emerson, right? Prolific writer. I wonder how people can get through their lives and get through this self-reliant evolutionary stage of themselves when they're not going to reach out and learn from the people who mastered the knowledge of this and began to bring it to the world in the first place. And it's only being popularized now because the internet's so prevalent that people have access to all the information in the world. Think about that, what I just said. When I was a kid, well, it wasn't very long ago. I'm only 40 years old. It wasn't very long ago. I didn't have access to every piece of information in the world. We had an outdated 1960s version of the Encyclopedia Britannica, okay, and a 70s version of the dictionary, okay? And it wasn't the Oxford Dictionary. It was like a children's dictionary or something, right? So, because those things were expensive. And you couldn't just, you know, you had to go to the library or whatever and sit and read. And the library didn't have endless books. And we didn't have bookstores that had endless supplies of things. And we didn't have PDFs and Kindles and, right? You know? But now, you're like, I'm not a strong reader. Well, that's because most people don't read well past the 6th grade reading level. Schools don't teach you to read better past 6th grade. They teach you how to write term papers. They stop teaching you how to read better around 5th or 6th grade. And that's why most adults only read up to a 6th grade reading level. So, if you need to get an Audible account, it's like $15 a month, and download the books, audio books. You get to keep what you download each month. Listen to them. Take notes while you're listening. Apply what you think is relevant to you. Put the rest aside. And keep doing that. And keep doing that. And keep doing that. And people say, well, what do I learn about? Well, start with finances. A lady the other day, yeah, I know this video is getting long, but I figure if I'm going to talk about some good stuff, I may as well just do it. Lady the other day in a forum that I'm part of, I won't name it here because it's not relevant to this channel, she said, Bob, it's not important that everybody makes more money. People can live without a lot of dollars. I'm like, yes, they can. I personally would like to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, whenever I want, wherever I want. How about you? I want you to think about that. Not just do whatever you want. Nope. Do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, wherever you want, anytime you want to. It'd be nice. Yeah. I want to make sure that I never think about things like, oh God, what if we don't have any food? Never crosses my mind. No, you guys see, I like to grow food and stuff, right? Hey, look, there's the pumpkin plant. Let's get big. I like to hunt, right? Fish. I also like a really good freaking steak every now and then, if I want it, right? Not all the time. It's not good for you all the time. But if I want it, if one day a few weeks ago my daughter said to me, Daddy, I always want to learn how to ride a skateboard. I'm like, do you have a skateboard? It's a place to start usually, right? And she goes, no. I said, I can get you a skateboard. It's not, unreasonable. I said, I'm just not going to get you, custom board or anything. Get you like one I had when I was a kid, right? And her next question was, you have to take lessons to learn how to ride one of those? Because, kids today, everybody's teaching something, right? I said, no. You put it on a sidewalk, you put your foot on it, and you get to step in it. And if you fall and hurt yourself, you get back up and do it again. And that's how you do it. And I told her she's not allowed to do it without elbow pads, knee pads, and her helmet on. She felt that was reasonable. Got her a skateboard. I can't get her off the skateboard, which is fine with me. Military guys were over the weekend, and they told my son that they're going to be doing some training drills and stuff on the weekends. The local guys, and they have some exercises that my son is more than welcome to come and try out and tour their facility whenever he wants to. And his question is, Daddy, can I go every weekend? Luckily, my buddy, who's a sergeant over there, he takes his son with him. And he said, I'll just come and pick him up and take him with us. I said, all right, buddy. I said, it's going to be hard work. He goes, okay. My son wants to lose weight. I didn't tell him he needed to. I didn't suggest it. Nobody did. He feels that he needs to. Good for him. Because he does need to. So he wants to take control of his own health. Proud of that. These things, when you create this awareness of yourself, and you create this awareness of your needs, you start to decide the kind of information and resources you need to take in. A lot of us do this outdoor stuff, and I think a lot of people think that some of us do it because we're guys and we like to sit in the woods, and I have a lot of women viewers too. Why do we do it? Some people say it's get centered with nature, feel grounded because life's simpler. It's a way to get away. And it's a funny thing, old mentor Leslie Feger said to me one time, he said, there's an Indian shaman that walked out into the wilderness one day. He just left his village and walked out into the wilderness and didn't come back. Years later, 15, 20 years later, a few young tribes people were walking through the wilderness, and they came across this outcropping in the rocks, and there was a cave. They went to explore it. And at the entrance, they found a walking stick, and they found a string of beads there. And they knew that that belonged to that old shaman. So they were feeling that they were going to find his remains inside this cave. They looked around inside, and there was a little fire pit, and the coals were still warm. There's nobody around, so they walked outside, and there, right outside the edge of the rock, was the shaman just sitting there. And they sat with him and said, Shaman, why did you never return? He said, honestly, our tribe was beginning to modernize, and things were beginning to change, and the noise was becoming too much. I came here to get away from it all. And they said, did you learn anything from this experience? He said, yes. You can go as far as you want to and be as secluded as you want to. But you're always going to be with the one person that you're trying to get away from the most. You're always going to have the noise and the clutter that you're trying to get away from the most. Your thoughts. If you spend your time thinking in a more constructive way, like you're not just out there doing like tasks just to do tasks and just to record YouTube videos and things like this. Like there's plenty of times I come out here and I refuse to record anything because it's not for you, it's for me, right? And this is something that I think needs to be said that's important, especially in the YouTube community, that a lot of people don't pay attention to. Who I am, okay, I'm talking about me right now, who I am, what makes me happy, who I need to be for me, and what I'll talk about in these videos. That's important to me because it's my vlog, it's my video log, right? All of those things do not concern you. Does that make sense? If I need to do this for me, and I need to express myself, doing the things that I love to do, producing the content that I want to create, representing myself in a way that I want to be seen, because it is who I am. I don't do it to please you, okay? And a lot of people take that the wrong way. They take that offensively. But you shouldn't, because that's the way you should be too. People say, well, what if I don't get as many views? So what? Well, I won't get as many likes. So what? Well, if I don't get as many subscribers, who cares? You don't need other people to validate you. You do not need to be validated. You do not need to be justified in what you're doing, who you are, the way you want to be. You don't need people to do that for you. You don't. You do that for you. You do that for you. I'll do that for me. If there's something you don't like that I put out, just, say, okay, I don't want to look at that one. No big deal. Right? And a lot of people are like, oh, Bob, wait, hold on a second. You're supposed to be creating this content for us. No, I create this content for me. I do it because I enjoy doing it. I like sharing it with people that want to receive it, that enjoy it too, and that might enjoy this kind of thing and the projects that we're going to be doing all summer long and throughout the winter. But I'm not, that's secondary. I'm doing it because I enjoy this. I've always enjoyed video logging things. I've been doing it before you guys were doing it. Every course that I've ever created, every business development thing I've ever done, every training I've ever done for a company, I've done through video recording. I've delivered digitally over the internet. Before I delivered it digitally over the internet, so before 2004, 2003, 2004, I delivered it via CD-ROM and VHS. So since 1996, I've been doing it for a long time. I can honestly say, and I've said this to sales teams that I used to train, I'm not here to train you because I want you to think I'm the greatest sales guy in the world. I could give two shits if people thought that. I'm here because somebody agreed to pay me the fee that I felt was reasonable for me to come and train you how to do this. And second, I'm here because I like to see people learn these skills, because you can make unlimited income when you know these skills. That was why. But the reason I didn't reveal to them, because it was none of their business, I did not need their validation, was I enjoyed taking things that I had created and thought up and worked out and applied out there in the real world over and over and over and over and over again, and made it work time and again without fail. I like taking that and seeing if it can be taught to other people to take it, run with it, without having to go through all the stumbling blocks that I went through. Because I think that a lot of times in life, you have to go through those stumbling blocks to be able to appreciate the process or utilize it properly, or to understand it or need it, see why you need it. I think when things are freely given to somebody, or they didn't have to get bumps and cuts and bruises along the way, they can't really appreciate it as much. Get back to my neighbor saying, I can't believe you go back out in the woods after getting Lyme like that. All right, 4 or 5 days in the house and being sick like that, and really made me appreciate again how nature says, pay attention to me. Because I can create beauty, nourishment, shelter, everything that you need, and I can wreck you at the same time. Right? Our bodies are like that. Our minds will do that to us. Our finances, if we'll let us. Our relationships, if we'll let it. Our careers, our jobs, businesses, those things can wreck us or provide us with what we need. Just depends on what we allow these things to do. That's self-reliance, folks. That's what it's all about. So, hope you didn't mind my 45-minute rambling session today, but I haven't taught one of my regular classes in a while that I usually teach in my regular business, and thought you guys could use it. Take care.